All right. Hello, everybody. I hope you all are doing well. This is DFS Army's NBA Tournament Strategy Show, where we look at a fantastic weekend full of money, and then we do that pretty quickly and try to get into today's slate and go through this massive, insane slate that we have on deck. But how are you doing, B-Dubs? How are you feeling, man?
I'm doing good. Weekend was actually pretty good for a change,
Yeah,
so looking to keep the momentum going today.
agreed. Agreed. Let's jump right into it and just look and see what DFS Army has been doing here lately. Just looking at Saturday, we crushed NBA. I see my guy SJBS winning $1,300, and I see you here, B Dubs, top three in the mini max, freaking crushing. But maybe even more impressive than you doing well, which is great, is getting first, second, and third in this mini with DFS Army members. I love seeing that. I love it when it happens and want it to happen more. On the NFL side of things, we've been crushing through too. I'll just run through these. You see $1,800 wins, Irish Jebs, 3K wins by Beacon Light, Nolan crushing it as well per usual. And then DFS Accountant, another DFS Army member win, screenshot, 8K win, and Peter, as you can see, a lot of money being made, but not to slight on anyone else, but these two 10K wins, one being Boss Man Geek himself, and then another one being Dean Radio. Just a fantastic weekend in general, and I love it when that happens. And if you want to be a part of some of these screenshots, I totally recommend becoming a DFS Army member. We can hook you up, help you out here. Use promo code BDUB if you want a 10% discount and, make up that money by winning some contests. So, like I said, great weekend. That's in the past. Let's get to this slate now. This is a lot going on here. You see a lot of games. How are you feeling about the slate in general, Brandon?
In the past, I usually kind of get hesitant about giant slates like this, but I'm starting to actually like them, and there's quite a few spots I'm liking tonight. So I'm feeling pretty good so far. We know how quick that can change, but
Yeah.
it's looking like a decent slate so far.
Yeah, I agree. I usually don't like these large slates, but when I MME, it's a little bit more fun and you can get a few different pieces of ways of getting different on slates like this. And I think there's some interesting spots here. So let's just jump right into the first game on the slate. We have the San Antonio Spurs against the Indiana Pacers. Starting off with the Spurs, I think the biggest injury news here is Vassell. I know the injury isn't as bad as we thought it was going to be, but he's still unlikely to play tonight. We typically love picking on the Pacers. Are any of these Spurs standing out for you tonight?
Yeah. So since you mentioned Vassell first, I think one guy we can go right back to if he's out again is Malachi. He got the start for Vassell last game, so he's going to be a very interesting value piece, and I love this matchup. So he's probably somebody I'm going to have a good chunk of if we get that news.
Agreed.
My second favorite is probably Zach Collins. He's just in really good form, and like I said, this is a great matchup. So he's probably somebody I'm going to have a lot of as well. And then this may surprise everybody. So I'm usually on the Victor fade train. I'm probably not going too crazy on him, but definitely if his ownership is low, like say if he's 5% owned, I don't mind getting like 10% on him as like a leverage play. So this matchup is just too good, and he has great upside. So I think that's great leverage if definitely he's low on. So those would be some of the guys I'm focusing on. I guess Keldon is worth a mention too. He should look good again if Vassell is out as well.
Yeah, no, I like those plays. And I didn't even say hey to the chat. Like, we have our usual crew in here, Dixon, Mr. 5, Thomas Dye. Good to see y'all in here. And it looks like we did officially get the news that Vassell is going to be out, so that's good. And like you're mentioning, Mr. 5, I love the bigs on this slate. And like you said, Brandon, I think Brandon's in a really good spot. He's the one guy I don't want to forget about from this team. Outside of that, Zach Collins does stand out a lot against this Pacers team. But like I said, I like a lot of bigs on this slate. So I'm not I'm not putting a like on Zach Collins or anything like that yet, just because I want to see how the rest of this slate plays out. Victor, I've been on him for a while, but I feel like he's finally priced appropriately. 8,500 is exactly where he should be. If he hits 6x value, he'll hit 50 points, which is pretty much where I expect him to average. But like you said, if his ownership is low, this is a pace up spot for him. So I do want to keep a pretty close eye on that ownership. And again, if you all want to see when we update ownership, that will happen here soon. And we always have it by the pre-lock show, which is at 5:30 p.m. Eastern time. And again, for VIP members only. Let's see. On the Pacers side of things, I think we both probably like the same guy here if I had to make an educated guess. But who like them on the Pacers? And they're healthy.
So Halliburton will be my main guy I focus on, and I'm hoping his ownership is low, but I wouldn't be surprised if it wasn't, because he's coming off his best game of the season. I think he put up just about 70 points on DraftKings last game, so I could see him being more popular, but he's definitely going to be a guy I have a decent amount of in this matchup. Outside of him, I'm not really too big of a fan. You can always make a case for Miles Turner. I'm sure his ownership will be low today too, especially since he burned quite a few of us last game. So if his ownership is low, I wouldn't mind getting leverage there. But like you said, there's so many great bigs tonight. It's probably not something I would force.
Yeah, I agree with you. I mean, I think Halliburton's one of my top 3 pay up options on this slate. Fantastic form, fantastic spot. I do think he'll probably end up being chalky, but we'll see. I don't really care if he is, though. It's just one of those spots. He's too good. Ownership is one of those things where sometimes I want to get away from the chalky plays if it doesn't make sense to me, but I think he makes a crap ton of sense today. Dixon, yeah, I did say I expect Wemby to average around 50 fantasy points. I know it's probably a hot take. But we'll see. And it's fantasy points, not pure points. That would be ridiculous.
That would be insane.
Ignore everything I say if I thought he was going to do that. But yeah, just fantasy points. Yeah, so I think it's safe to move on from this team. For me, it's Halliburton. I think Turner's an interesting option. For me, I'm only going to go there if he's extremely low owned. If he's getting any type of ownership, I'm not super interested in it because of how volatile he can be, and the other spots I like more, but I do think he's worth consideration on this slate. And they're a healthy team, so I don't like anyone else here. Next up, we have the Wizards going up against the 76ers. I feel like we have to talk about the massive spread that's here. I think that's definitely going to be a major concern for most people. And then outside of that, the Wizards do have a good bit of injury news that we have to consider as well. How are you treating the Wizards tonight, man?
This team is always so hard to target because they're just so bad, and like I swear, every game they have, they're like a double-digit underdog. So, figure Gafford is worth a mention. He's questionable, but I think he was present in shoot around. So, at 4,900, I could understand the play there. Not the best matchup, but I think he could definitely pay that price tag off. Jordan Poole, so he's been looking god awful, but his price is finally dropping down to like a point where I'm comfortable like taking some shots. So depending on his ownership, which I think it would be fairly low, I wouldn't mind taking some shots there. And I think he's an even better play over on FanDuel. He's 6,700 over there, so that's even more tempting to play him on FanDuel.
Yeah.
So he might be a guy I might consider taking some shots on. And then I think Kuzma is always valuable. I say he's probably the most secure player on this team that I don't mind taking shots on.
Yeah, if you think there's a world that this game stays any kind of close, I think Kuzma and Poole are especially worth considering. I've been on the Poole train ever since he fell below 8K. And like you said, I'm still on board. He has a massive usage rate. He does, and Kuzma does. If the questionable guys end up being out, I think it makes them even more in play. But these are not plays you will feel good about, and you shouldn't. They're really just kind of guys that you want in probably 1 to 10% of your lineups, and that's about it. Yeah, so for me, it's just Kuzma and Poole. Anyone else worth mentioning here?
Not for me. I always mention Tyus a little, but even him hasn't really been in too good of a form. So
Yeah.
that's probably it for
Yeah.
me.
It's also a tough matchup against the Sixers. So I do think if you were like, hey, what's the one team I can just write off? It probably is the Wizards tonight. But I still like getting some pieces to these type of games typically because that's what everyone does. It's just kind of avoid it. On the Sixers side of things, they're pretty healthy. No real major concerns from that side of things. Anyone you like in this side of the ball?
Yeah, few people actually. So I know looking at the spread is always concerning,
Yeah.
especially for the team who should be doing the blowing out. So um but this matchup is too good, so I think MB is going to be pretty hard to ignore, and I'm hoping his ownership is low due to that spread. Because one thing I always like to ask myself is, if it is going to be a blowout, who's going to be the reason for the blowout? And
Mm-hmm.
this is a smash spot for MB. He should be able to do like whatever he wants against his
Yeah.
team. So,
Fantastic spot for him. And honestly, if you just look at matchups, it's a fantastic spot for all of the Sixers.
yep.
And like you said, I don't typically play the blowout narrative because that's what everyone does. So I'm just like, what if it does stay close? And then, like you mentioned, if it does blow out, who's the one doing it? Embiid's price point does give me a little bit of concern for the blowout narrative. I think Maxey could be a little interesting here. Whereas I think he's priced appropriately, where even if the game does blow out, if he's a big part of it, he can still get there. So I think Maxey's on my radar and Embiid's on my radar. Any Harris and like any interest in Harris or anyone like that?
Um, Sometimes I have interest in Harris. He probably won't be a guy I'll force in, but
Yeah, I agree.
he's just one of those guys who's solid and plays a lot of minutes and usually gets you somewhere around 30 something fantasy points. So not saying he's not viable, but probably not somebody I'm forcing. And then I think Oubre is worth looking at again too. I would imagine he starts again and he's still at a decent price tag. I know he usually has a slow start, but this matchup is so good to where I think he could smash as well.
Yeah, a situation. I'm not really, like you said, I'm not really trying to force any of these guys in, but if they show up naturally, they're not guys I'm going to X out. Pops, I see your question. We have a really big slate, so I can't get to it right now. But if you can join the pre-lock show, we can definitely get to it. Or Wednesday, we have or not Wednesday, but Thursday we have a small slate too, so it can definitely help you out then.
It is worth mentioning that some of these new guys on this team, I think, were listed available. I know Batum for sure was listed
Mhm.
available, so
And
that
Covington,
might muddy the water for some of these other guys too that aren't
yeah, like
really like,
Elio.
yeah. So I would keep that in mind if you do play Kelly O, but I still think he starts today.
Yeah, I think you're probably right on the starting standpoint. I think the main guys I'm actually going to make sure I have exposure to is Embiid and Maxey, and just kind of move on from there.
Yep.
Next up, we have the Dallas Mavericks, and it's looking like they're going to be pretty healthy today, unless I'm missing anything. Are you interested in any of these guys today? I know Lively's been hot lately.
Yep. So I'm always cautious about playing Lively because the Mavericks rotations are so weird, but he looked really good in their last game. And like anytime he has played over 30 minutes, those have been his best games of the season. So he'd be somebody I'd be willing to take a risk on, especially since Wendell is out too.
Mhm.
Their defense is probably going to be a little softer down low. So I think he could be a sneaky play if his ownership is pretty low. And then Kyrie is somebody I keep looking at and hoping his price continues to drop because we haven't seen that smash spot for him, which his upside is capped, of course, because of Luca. So um, I'm not sure I'll be going there. I like him a little more over on FanDuel. He's 300 cheaper over there, so I'd be more willing to play him over there. And then the obvious guy on the team, Luca, like he can put up 70 points any night, so he's always worth a mention. And then Grant Williams, he's just playing too good not to mention his name, so I think he's another viable option.
Yeah, right now for me, these guys aren't really standing out. I think Luca is always in play. I'm looking forward to Irving being a little bit cheaper. This is an interesting spot, but the Magic have been pretty good defensively this season, so not a spot I'm really trying to get overly aggressive on. So for me, it's Luca or bust here. Lively's interesting, like you mentioned. If he shows up naturally for me, I'm fine with it, but I don't think he will because there's just other bigs I like a bit more on this slate. So we'll see. I do like the Magic side of this ball of the game a little bit more than I thought I would on this slate. But part of it is due to the injuries they have. We have Markelle Fultz out, Jonathan Isaac's questionable, Gary Harris is out, Wendell Carter Jr. is out, like you already mentioned. Who's standing out for you on this team?
So with Fultz out again, I think guys like Cole Anthony and Anthony Black will be viable again. Hoping that ownership on Cole is a little bit lower too, because he burned us last game too. So usually when that happens, ownership tends to die off. But I guess we'll have to wait and see on that. And then even Jalen Suggs is viable. He's been pretty consistent so far this season. With Wendell out, you can probably go back to Goga. He did see a significant price increase. He absolutely smashed. I think he got 12 times value last game with him being the flat 3K minimum price. So he should be a viable option. And then Paolo and Franz, they're always a toss-up for me. If I had to pick one over the other, it'd probably be Paolo just because of the form he's in. He's put up back-to-back 50-plus DK point games, so I'm really liking the form he's in.
Yeah. I think most of you guys know, for me, I like playing bigs against this Mavericks team, so Goga, he's a go for me. I think Cole Anthony, he's going to be a guard I have a good amount of exposure to. The Lakers are a good defense, so just because he struggled last game, I'm not overly concerned about that. Whereas I'm totally fine going, I'm just totally fine going Cole Anthony, Suggs. Black is fine. I'm comfortable getting some exposure, but I don't want to go crazy there. Outside of that, with Franz and Paolo, I think Paolo could be viable, but I just think the pace that this team plays at is a little bit harder for me to go force a ton of exposure to him. So I just don't think I'm getting there on that slate, on this slate at least. So I like a few of the pieces. Like I mentioned, I like Goga, I like Suggs, I like the guards, Anthony. But outside of that, I'm just kind of sticking with that group of four and moving on. Anyone else you think we should mention?
No, I don't think so.
Okay. Cool. Next up, we have the Warriors against the Pistons. The Warriors are, pretty healthy, which is not something we say too much of the season typically, but they are for now. Are you interested in any of these guys?
It would be pretty hard to get here. I know we're usually in the same boat, attacking the low on Curry, so I don't mind going that route. And then one play I really do like over on FanDuel is Klay Thompson. He's 5,400 on there, and that price is like seriously cheap for what he can do. So he'll be a main target for me over there. But on the DraftKings side, it's kind of tough to target this team with everybody healthy. Everybody's still kind of priced up. So
yeah, agreed.
Not too much interest here.
Yeah, right there with you. Just some low-owned shots on Curry, and that's about it. And yeah, Mr. Five, the Davs or the Mavs, they don't play D at any position. It's just not their strong suit. But since they play so slow, it's usually okay. The Pistons, on the other hand, we have Ivy listed as TBD. Burks is listed as TBD. Bogdanovich has been out for a good chunk of time. Morris, Livers, same story. I know there's a few of these Pistons guys you've been on for a good bit of the season. Any of them that you like tonight?
Yeah, especially if Ivy and Burks are out again. I think Marcus Sasser becomes one of the best plays on the slate. Like that dude has just been crushing with his opportunity that he's been getting. I think the last 3 games is when he's seen the bulk of his minutes, and all 3 games he scored over 30 DK points. So he's definitely probably going to be the top value option, I would say, if those guys are out again. Killian Hayes is going to be another viable option. I never feel good about playing him, but he should see a crap ton of minutes and still at a good price tag. And then some of these other guys, if I get them naturally, I won't mind, but probably won't force them. Jalen Duren might be somebody interesting if his ownership is low, which I imagine it would be, because one weak point on Golden State we talk about all the time is their front court. So I think this could be a smash spot for Duren for sure. And then Azar is always worth a mention. Like he smashed in their last game. I think he put up like almost 50 DK points. So he's always worth a mention, but with him being priced up, he's just not somebody I'm probably willing to force in.
Yeah, it's weird for me because I usually like picking on this Golden State team a little bit, but none of these guys are standing out for me too much. I think you're right on Marcus Sasser. I think he'll be in a fantastic spot if Ivy and Burks are out. I'll have a little bit of interest in Thompson. Cunningham is viable, but the price tag's just tough to get to. So right now, I'm not forcing the issue of any of these guys, but if Ivy and Burks end up being out, I will have a little bit more interest. And Duren, I think, could be a sneaky call for sure. But again, a lot of bigs I like on the slate. So I would love to get some of him naturally. I don't really want to have to force it. So we'll have to wait and see on the pre-lock what happens with that one. Next up, we have the Bucks against the Nets. You know, this Bucks team kind of boring right now just because they're pretty healthy. Are any of them standing out for you, though, against the Nets?
Dame and Giannis, they're always worth mentioning, but they have been very frustrating playing them so far. So in this matchup, I would be willing to play them because, I mean, it's inevitable one of these guys, or if not both, are going to start smashing again. So these are guys if the matchup is good, I don't mind trying to get in front of that. Especially Lillard, his price is still decent for the upside he has, and even better on FanDuel. He's at 8,700 over there, so I like taking shots over there even more. So I think those are the two obvious guys. And then Brooke Lopez stands out for me again. He was a leverage play for me last game. He's just somebody I like to target. He has double upside and is a great defender. I think last game he had like 7 or 8 blocks, which is just crazy. So I might be getting some more of him because I could see him going under the radar.
Yeah, I think it's an interesting spot. As of right now, none of these guys are really standing out for me too much. So I think it's not a pass for me, but it's one of those situations I'm just not going to force the issue on. I think you're right. Like Giannis and Lillard are always viable and interesting, but at this point, they're kind of like a prove it to me situation. I need to see them have that upside a little bit more consistently. And I think Giannis is probably my pick between the two if it's like a gun to head situation, just with Claxton being out, a little bit of a weaker front court for the Nets. But, you know, the Nets are the Nets. So it's not really something that I'm overly concerned about one way or the other. Talking about the Nets, though, it looks like Lonnie Walker's probable. Claxton's out. Cam Johnson's been out for a little bit. Who's standing out for you?
Really only one guy in particular on this team, and that's Spencer Dinwiddie. I think he could be a sneaky play. The Bucks defense is so bad, especially Lillard's defense. Point guards have been crushing them so far, and I'm really hoping his ownership is low. He's another guy who you don't feel good about playing, but if the matchup is right and he has a decent price, I definitely don't mind going there.
Yeah, it's so sad to see a team that was really good defensively go from like talented to awful with just the switch of one player. Wonder if there's any regrets there. Too early to say that, probably. But we'll see. I think right there with you. We've been on this guards against the Bucks train for pretty early in the season, and I think Spencer Dinwiddie's in a good spot. I think Ben Simmons is worth considering, but I'm not excited about it, so I'll do a little bit more digging before I take a shot on that. But for now, Spencer Dinwiddie's really the only guy I'm interested in forcing in a little bit. Anyone else you think we should touch on here?
No, the rest of this team is pretty priced up, so I think they'll be hard to get to. One guy I've been kind of keeping my eye on is Mikal Bridges.
Yeah.
Just haven't seen it from him so far, so he's another guy where I'll be waiting for his price to drop down a little more before I start attacking him.
Yeah, I think we talked about it on a Thursday or Friday show. We've been waiting for the all-star type of season from him, and it just has not been there. Hopefully it turns around, but another guy, just need to see it from him a little bit. Next up, we have the Lakers against the Miami Heat. Two teams have been not surprisingly, good defensively for the Heat, but the Lakers have been pretty good from a defensive standpoint this year. Looks like Jackson Hayes is questionable for them. Rui is out. Gabe Vincent's out. Vanderbilt's out. Are you liking any of the pieces from the Lakers today?
Yep. Anthony Davis will probably be a leverage play for me again. I mean, he's just putting up 60 burgers left and right, and for whatever reason, it's still priced under 10K. So
don't question it. Be okay with it. It's fine.
Not questioning
Don't
it,
change
but he's definitely somebody I'm gonna have some shares of. Not the best matchup, but he's just playing too well for me not to have any of them.
Yeah.
Some of these other guys, it'll probably be a little harder to get to. I think Russell is worth a mention. I know he struggled a bit last game, but outside of that, he's been fairly solid in playing a crap ton of minutes just because their depth at guard right now is pretty light. And then, I don't think anybody else is really standing out to me. LeBron is worth a mention, but he's never somebody I really like forcing or feel good about playing.
Yeah, I'm right there with you on that one. I think the only guy I'm really interested in is AD. And like you said, I think it's going to be easy leverage play. He'll probably be, I have no clue, but super low owned, below 5%. And so you might be able to have 5% of him and still have decent leverage. Up to probably 10% is probably where I will want to be on him. The matchup isn't my favorite, but he's just been in fantastic form. And this might be the last time we see him below 10K. So I'm trying to get in there while we still can. The Miami Heat side, looks like they have Jimmy Butler listed as probable, Duncan Robinson probable, Jovic is questionable. Anyone really popping for you on this team? I know Josh Richardson has been a guy that a lot of people have been talking about for a while now.
Yeah, Richardson is worth mentioning. He's never a guy I'm excited to play, but he's playing close to 30 minutes and is 4,500. So I think he's viable for sure.
And who's this new hero that we're seeing this year?
I was gonna say hero. I have a little bit of interest in. Like he's playing like a superstar right now, and hard to ignore that. So that could be some good leverage there as well.
Let's not talk about the game, though, that makes no sense, where when Jimmy Butler was out, he had his worst game. That
Yep.
Still mad about it, but it's fine. It's fine. Hero's been great. But like I've been saying, the Lakers have been a pretty good defense this year, and so I'm really not excited about any of these guys tonight. I think you can take a shot on Richardson. You can take a shot on Butler. He tends to play well in these kind of matchups. But outside of that, not super excited about it. So we can move on. Next up, we have the Los Angeles Clippers going up against the Knicks. For the Clippers, James Harden's playing tonight, which kind of throws a wrench if you were interested in playing these guys, because we just don't really know what the usage is going to look like at this point. Looks like James Harden is going to play the off-ball role. So going back to that shooting guard position, will he start making threes? Who knows? But how are you thinking about the Clippers tonight, man?
Yeah, this team is just going to be ugly to play going forward.
Well, until
really
someone gets hurt, which probably won't take too long.
Yep. With Terrence Mann still out. I think Norman Powell will probably be the only viable guy for me. I still, even with Harden on the team now, he's somebody who should still see a good chunk of minutes. So outside of that, the whole team is going to be pretty hard to target tonight.
And like I've seen people talking about one-off shots on Paul George and Kawhi. I get it. But for me, this is another wait and see situation. I don't want to put a blind bet on it because I really just don't know how it's going to fall. James Harden's a little bit too expensive for me to want to take a shot on the role that he's going to play because we just haven't really seen him be in great form over the last few seasons. So yeah, I'm not excited about this team at all. I understand the Powell play, and I'm fine with a little bit, but not a spot I want to go crazy on.
Yep.
Was there another guy you want to talk about?
Oh no, I was just agreeing with what you said.
For the Knicks, man, they have been lost without RJ Barrett, but he is questionable today, so we'll see if he actually plays or not. Any interest for you in these Knicks today?
I never feel good about playing him, but his price tag keeps drawing me in, and that's Julius Randle. Like that dude can't, like, if he had to make 3 shots in a row to save his life, I don't think he could do it, honestly. But he does get fantasy points elsewhere too, outside of scoring. So he always interests me when he's at this low 8K price range, and especially if his ownership is low. And then over on FanDuel, he's 7,800 over there. So he's definitely somebody on my radar. You can never rule out Brunson. I don't think he'll be a guy I'm forcing tonight, but he has great upside and he could break a slate any given night. So I think he's an honorable mention. And then if Barrett is ruled out, I think you got to mention Josh Hart. Probably not somewhere I'm getting to, especially with his price getting up there, but he's worth a mention at least.
Yeah. And Harden's been solid. Okay, sure. If you think, what I really mean is I don't think he's going to pay off that 8,800 price tag just shooting threes, but if you think he's good enough, take your shot. Take your shot. But it won't be me. For the Knicks, I am probably not getting there. I mean, Randall's price tag is falling, but I'm just not a big fan of it, to be honest with you. So I don't foresee myself getting a lot of Knicks tonight unless RJ Barrett is ruled out, kind of like what you mentioned there. Anyone else worth mentioning here?
No, this overall is just going to be a hard team to target. This whole game in general, it's going to be hard to target.
Not a fun one. Not a fun one. For the Utah Jazz against the Bulls, the Jazz are healthy. Are any of them standing out for you against the Bulls?
Probably another team that's going to be hard for me to target. I mean, Clarkson looks okay tonight. He still had a pretty decent price tag. I'm just always cautious about playing him because he can be volatile. Same thing with Horton Tucker. He's had some pretty solid games lately, but they always concern me when they're kind of getting up around this price tag. Marketing, I like when he's at this 8K range. But overall, I'm just not too big of a fan of this matchup. So outside of those 3 guys, they would be the ones I would target. These other guys might be a little harder to get to. Guess you can throw John Collins in there too, but he's finally over that 6K price tag. So he probably won't be somebody I'll force in tonight.
Yeah, just not excited about these guys, like you're saying. Not a situation where I'm really trying to force anyone here, but the DS gives it to me. Naturally, I'm fine, but I don't foresee myself being over 20% on any of these guys tonight. Or maybe at least 30% is more realistic. For the Bulls, Alex Caruso is probable. Patrick Williams is probable. We have the trio here once again, all priced decently and trying to pick your poison here. Who's standing out for you with these guys?
Yeah, I mean, same story with the trio. Whatever mix I get of them, it's fine. I give up trying to figure out which of the 3 is going to go off. So I always just like having a decent mixture of them. So those would be the main guys I play.
Yeah, like you said, I'm going to have exposure to these guys unless there ends up being better spots that pop up due to injury. Uh, Probably if I had to rank, I would say DeRozan first, Levine, then Vooch is
Yep.
probably my order here, but
Yep. Same for
we'll
me.
have more clarity on that for the pre-lock show. Any interest in Drummond today?
Um, he's still at a decent price tag, and if he pops up in my lines, I'm fine. Not something I want to go too overboard on because you never know like how
Yeah.
many minutes he's going to play. His minutes aren't secure enough for me to feel good about a good chunk of him. But
Yep, I agree. All right, only a few more games left. We have the Atlanta Hawks against the Oklahoma City Thunder. This is a game that it's the highest total game on the slate. It's looking like probably one of the best ones, really close spread. I think this is a game that we're going to want exposure to tonight. But who's standing out for you on the Hawks side?
so we'll have to keep an eye on the starting line. Because I think it was Uppers who called it out the other day about them like rotating Jalen Johnson and Sadiq Bey in the starting lineup. So um, whoever starts, I'll probably put them over the other. But as of now, Jalen Johnson is probably my favorite play on the team. He's been looking good pretty much this whole season, and really he should probably be priced above 6K for what he's doing. But again, I won't question it. So I love him tonight. Trae Young, he hasn't been the best, and we haven't seen that like slate breaking smash game yet. But this might be the environment to do it. So especially if his ownership is low, he might be somebody I want to target, and that goes with DeJounte Murray as well. They both have that slate breaking upside. And then you got two other guys that I think would be viable. Sadiq Bey and Bogdanovich would be two guys I want to make sure I have a piece of.
Yeah, I think you're spot on with your read of this game. I think DeJounte Murray is probably going to be your chalkier guy because he's just been in really good form lately. Trae Young is kind of like your sneaky high upside pick, hoping he's low owned, but just given the total on this game, he might not be as low owned as I hope he is, but we'll have to wait and see on that. Jalen Johnson, assuming he starts, will be a guy I want a lot of exposure to. And then outside of that, I do want a mix of like your Bogdanoviches, your Bays, plays like that. Did you mention Capella at all? Did you have any interest in him?
I was gonna mention actually him and Okongwu. Those will be probably less of priorities for me just because there's some other center plays that I like more than them. But in this game environment, I'll probably make sure I have at least a little bit of exposure to both of them.
Yep, right there with you. Good to see you. Put me in the game. Thank you for checking us out. For the Thunder side of things, the big news here is SGA. He's questionable. Well, he was out to start the day, and then
Yep.
he moved to questionable, and then he went to shoot around. So it was looking like he might play here. But with that in consideration, like, what are you doing with these guys?
If SGA does play, I'm not a fan of his price, but if his ownership is low, he'd be another guy I'd be willing to have a small exposure to. Nothing too crazy because I just wish he was a bit cheaper, but he's a guy who could pop off in this game for sure. And then Chet Holmgren, he'll be my main priority, especially if SGA plays. These other guys pretty much become unplayable for me at least. So Holmgren will be my top priority, and then SGA is like a low on leverage play possibly.
Yeah, and if SGA is out, I'm totally fine going back to Giddey here, Jalen Williams, even a little bit of Lou Dort. Same philosophy I had on the pre-lock show last Friday. Totally fine getting a little bit of exposure to them. And like you mentioned, I think SGA is in a really good spot here if he ends up playing. And we can't really trust the minutes limit news we get from coaches anymore. But as long as we don't get that, I'm totally fine going right back or going to him here. And I'll probably try and force the leverage here, but I would assume he's probably not going to be too popular if I had to guess. Anyone else worth mentioning to you?
No, I don't think so.
Sweet. All right, last 3 games. We have the Boston Celtics against the Timberwolves. For the Boston side of things, from an injury news standpoint, Derek White is listed as probable. We have Brissett listed as questionable, and nothing else really too serious here. Are you liking any of the Celtics tonight?
This is another team that's like really hard to target when they're healthy. If there was a couple of guys I would play, it would be Drew Holiday.
Mm-hmm.
He looked really good last game. Porzingis, I think this is a good spot for him as well. And then Jaylen Brown, as long as Jaylen Brown is like in that 7K range, he's somebody I wouldn't mind like a small shot on. But like I said, overall, it's just always hard to target specific guys on this team.
Yeah, I know we don't really love the idea of teams resting players, but this is one of those teams. I can't wait for them to start resting guys, because then we'll have some very clear and obvious plays that we'll like. As of right now, though, I don't really want to pay up for Tatum when everyone's healthy. Porzingis is interesting here. He's viable. Prefer him at the power forward position tonight. Brown is always worth considering, but he's not really standing out too much for me on this slate. And I think Giroux, like you mentioned, is one of the more well-priced, obvious point guards on the slate, who's just kind of like a consistent play at 7K. So I like these guys, but not enough to force the issue tonight for me. Anyone else you think we should touch on?
No, I don't think so.
Yeah, just not my favorite spot for him. The Timberwolves are pretty healthy. Nothing's really standing out for them. What are your thoughts on them?
Not really liking this side of the ball either. There's a couple guys you can make a case for if you're looking for like the last guy in line fillers. Nas Reed, he's playing pretty solid so far this year and still at a decent price tag. And Mike Conley as well, 4,900. He could definitely pay that price tag off. I'm just not too big of a fan of the matchup, but those would probably be the 2 main guys I would target.
Yeah, I have a little bit of interest in Anthony Edwards here. I mean, I don't love picking on the Celtics, but 8,900, I definitely think he does have a little bit of upside, a little bit of skin left on the bones here. But I'm not sold on him being a leverage play for me quite yet. If the matchup wasn't the Celtics, it would be a little bit easier for me to stomach. But outside of him and outside of the 2 pieces you mentioned, I'm not getting here, to be honest. For the Kings against the Rockets, this is usually a team we like to beat up on a little bit. The Kings, from an injury news standpoint, let's see, what are we working with? De'Aaron Fox is out. Trey Lyles is out. Who's standing out for you on the Kings?
Mainly only one guy, Malik Monk. He's my favorite guy to target whenever Fox is out. He's been looking pretty solid. I wish he was a bit cheaper, but he's really the only one that's kind of standing out for me. Again, with Sabonis, like I want to play him, but DK still doesn't have his price right. Like when you look at him and his game log, like he should definitely be under 10K. When you look at Anthony Davis, who's been putting up 60 burgers, he should be over 10K. So DK has like their pricing off on some of these guys, and Sabonis, he's still just too expensive for me to play tonight.
That's a hell of a comparison, and it's so right. Like, that's actually wild. With that being said, though, I do have a little bit of interest in Sabonis. We've seen Bigs crush this team. This was Victor's first big game, and since then, we've seen teams do well against them. The hardest part is just the price tag. With Fox, with the spread being close, I do think Sabonis will have to be a pretty big part of this team. They've been struggling from an offensive standpoint with Fox out. They have to do something to get these guys more involved. I think Monk is definitely a pretty solid answer there, but like you mentioned, the price tag's a little bit worrisome, but I'll have some exposure. Sabonis is a guy I do want a little bit of tonight. I just think there's enough there with the matchup against the Rockets and with Fox not playing that I want to have at least a little bit. The price tag is ridiculous and it makes 0 sense, But in this case, they might have got it right in this one matchup. Rest of the season, awful. But today, I kind of get it. Next up for the Rockets, we have Thompson out. Easton's been out. Oladipo's been out. No real injury news for these guys. Do you like them tonight?
I do quite a bit, actually. I would say Jalen Green and Fred VanVleet will probably be my two priority plays on this team. And
Okay.
then I even like some secondary pieces, Jabari Smith and Şengün. Not sure how much of him I'll have just because, like we mentioned multiple times, there's so many other good center plays tonight. But I do like this spot for him as well. And then it kills me to say this. It makes me sick, but even Dylan Brooks is viable. Like that dude, he's been like so efficient so far this year. Like if you actually look at his stat line, it might shock you with how efficient he's been. Like he's playing almost 40 minutes a game and is just shooting the ball well. Can he keep that up and is it sustainable? Question mark there for sure, but he's in really good form. So if I get to him naturally, I would be okay with it. Probably won't force him in, but I wouldn't mind playing him tonight either.
I hate that you said that,
Yep.
Brandon. Mostly because
I do too.
the sim model loves him a good
Yep.
bit, which you can get access to if you become a DFS Army VIP member. And at first I was like, it's wrong. I don't care. And it's Dylan Brooks. Who cares? But he's facing the Kings, not a great defensive team. And if ownership is low, Dylan Brooks might be a leverage play for me tonight.
For
and
sure.
does that mean he's going to fail and disappoint me like he always does? Yeah. But there's enough pointing in that direction that it's probably going to happen. And I don't like it, but it is what it is. And outside of that, like you said too, I love Fred VanVleet tonight. I like Jalen Green tonight. Those are two guys I want exposure to. But with all of that being said, this is one of the lower game totals on the slate. So it's not a situation you want to go crazy with, but they're all priced appropriately enough where I'm fine being over the field on quite a few of these guys. Anyone else we should mention?
No, that's pretty much it for me.
I feel like you mentioned Dylan Brooks and everyone just turns off the show.
After his last game I had, I'm like, damn, I'm going to have to mention this guy on our next show, and I'm not going to like it.
Yeah, got to talk about him. One of those things. Last game of the slate. Unfortunate news with CJ. He's having those lung issues again, so he'll probably be out for a little bit. That's probably the biggest piece of news here. Everyone else has been out for a while. And with CJ being out, that does benefit a lot of these starters and the team in general. Who are you trying to get exposure to tonight on the Pelicans?
First off, I definitely hope CJ is okay and he's not out too long. I know he'll be reevaluated over the next couple of days, so hoping he won't be out too long. Hate to see that news again.
Yeah. That was awful.
Yeah, seriously. But with him out, I think Brandon Ingram becomes a top priority for me on this team, and I'll probably have a good chunk of him tonight. As far as some of these other guys, I think it depends on who starts, which it looks like it might be Kyra Lewis. So I think he could be another solid value option. Sore subject for most of us because he burned us last time, but Jordan Hawkins, he's going to be viable again. He should play a crap ton of minutes. So hopefully he plays better than he did last game. Zion.
What did Zion do to you, Brandon? I feel like you really don't like him.
Because he hasn't done one thing, or he hasn't had one game to pay his price off, and he's another guy where I get it because of the upside he has, but he should be cheaper based on how he's been performing. So I'm still on the fence about Zion because he's been solid, like for real life basketball, but for DFS purposes, he just isn't looking good at all. So he's probably not somebody I want too much of. I guess it really just depends on his ownership for me.
Yeah. I'm right there with you. I think Ingram's the obvious play here. He should be the super chalk tonight. And if he's not, then that's awesome for us because we'll have a crap ton. Like you, I feel like the Pelicans don't know what the hell they want to do at the guard spot because we've seen Dyson Daniels start, we've seen Hawkins start, and now we're seeing Lewis potentially do it. I think it's obvious they don't really trust any of these guys, and now they're losing CJ for a bit. You have to know they're not loving this situation too much. Like you, I'm gonna make sure I get exposure to whoever starts, but I don't love the spot. For me, it's Ingram's the obvious play, and then outside of that, I want to make sure I have some pieces or some exposure to like Hawkins, Daniels, Lewis, just to kind of make sure I have a nice mix there. And then Zion is interesting. If he's too chalky, I'm okay with the fade, kind of like you, not going too crazy there. But if he's not getting any ownership because people are worried about the matchup against the Nuggets, I'm totally fine attacking it. So it's one of those wait and see situations for me. Any interest in Joval or anyone like that?
Not too much for me. There's just too many other options at center that I like more than him. And I could see him getting into foul trouble tonight against Jokic. So definitely not liking this spot for him too much.
Speaking of Jokic, my favorite pay up of the night, we have Jamal Murray out dealing with a hamstring injury, which does open things up a little bit for this team. Who are you liking for the Nuggets?
Jokic for sure, which I'm hoping his ownership is low. I think it's
probably not going to be as low as we want it. I don't think so.
Especially with Murray out, but we'll see. But I'll definitely be having some of him. Gordon and MPJ is always tough getting them right, so I usually like getting to a mixture of them if they're in a decent matchup. And then Reggie Jackson was going to be viable for me until I saw his price. So because he should start with Murray out, but I'm not sure how much, if any, of him I'll have. I will say he's a much better play on FanDuel at 4,200. So I think he's more viable on FanDuel than he is DraftKings.
Makes me want to play FanDuel a little bit.
Yeah, seriously. Like FanDuel has some soft pricing on some of these guys. So.
DK was like no fun today, whereas FanDuel was like, hey, play whoever you want. That sounds awesome. But yeah, I'm right there with you. I want a mix of Aaron Gordon and MPJ. I think I prefer Aaron Gordon, but like you, I want to get a mix. They both see an increasing usage with Murray out. No surprise there. Matchup against the Pelicans isn't my favorite thing, but I think they're a little bit too cheap for the role they'll be playing with Jamal Murray out. And then Jokic, I don't think we have to explain this. He dominated last season when Murray was out. I mean, he dominates all the time. And matchup is fine. He's done well against this team in the past, so I'm not really overly concerned about the matchup against Joval. And yeah, I'm planning on being over the field on Jokic. Whatever his ownership is, I'm going to be over it. I don't know if I'll be able to make him a leverage play depending on what the ownership is, but we'll have to wait and see on that. So yeah, y'all, crazy slate. A lot of great bigs, but as y'all can see, there's some spots that we're not as excited about and some spots that we were super wanting to be over the field on. So we look forward to seeing everyone on the pre-lock show where B-Dubs and I will be. Wait, will you be on the pre-lock show today, Brandon? Yeah.
Yep,
okay. I was like, that might not be true. But yeah, we'll both be on the pre-lock show. We'll make sure everyone's good to go for this slate, and let's get it. We'll see you all later. Peace out.